measured package of interventions, a measured package of investments that are well considered and that will have maximum impact. As I've said before, and this is lost on some, this is a really difficult time to try and create customers. This is a very difficult time, Speaker, to try and create customers for business. What is needed is a cash injection. We are working to deliver a package that will have great effect, one that will be consistent with the Commonwealth Government and one that will be announced in due course.
Leader of the Opposition on a supplementary.
Premier, the clock is ticking. You speak about monitoring situations. Harry's Menswear in Berwick, which employs 5 people, has seen a 40% downturn and is at risk of closing without immediate assistance. For 2 days now, you have refused to announce any action to support small business in this state, despite every other state government around the country doing so. Premier, what will you do to support Harry's Menswear, its staff, and the thousands of employees whose jobs are at risk while you do nothing?
Just before calling the Premier, I remind those all members, to refer their comments through the chair, not directly to other members of this place in question time. The Premier.
Thank you, Speaker. As I said in my answer to the principal question, the government is working hard to develop a package of support. We will make announcements in due course. I reject the assertion or assumption that anybody's doing nothing. Everybody is getting on and working very, very hard to support everyone who's affected by this crisis. We will have further announcements to make in due course. And at that time, we'll be sure to offer those opposite a briefing.
On a minister's statement, I call the Premier.
Much, Speaker. Very much on topic in terms of taking action to support those who need it most. $437 million injection to the health system announced today, Speaker. That's what is absolutely critical. New money, new funding, so that we can open new beds, employ more staff, buy more equipment, and make sure that we've got the protective equipment, everything that the system needs at this stage, Speaker. And I hasten to add, this will not be the last announcement we make in terms of providing support to our health workforce and through them to the tens of thousands of patients who will need additional care. These new spaces, all recommissioned spaces, for instance, the old Peter Mac, we're going to open up wards there. We're going to have treatment spaces and health services for the people of Geelong and that region through opening up parts of the old Baxter House. We are going to commission shell space at the Bendigo Hospital, right the way across the state, and there'll be many more of these announcements, Speaker. We are providing to our dedicated clinicians the resources and the resolve so that they are ready to provide care and support to those who will need it most. When it comes to equipment, when it comes to additional capacity, this $437 million on top of the $100 million that was announced on Sunday is in every way everything that our health system needs at this point. I do again make the point, Speaker, the need will grow. Our investment will be there consistently. I take this opportunity to thank our health workforce, and not just those who are frontline service providers. Health is delivered by teams of people, cooks and cleaners and orderlies, people who work in admin. The whole team across our health system is doing an amazing job to be ready for the worst of this health emergency. Bureaucrats and departmental officials of the Department of Health and Human Services, they're working very hard as well. We're all in this together, and the government's playing its part by providing the resources required to save lives and provide the very best care.
Leader of the Opposition.
You Speaker, my question is again to the Premier. The West Australian Labor Government announced a $607 million package, which includes measures to support West Australian small and medium businesses and West Australian workers. WA businesses with a payroll of between $1 and $4 million will receive a one-off grant of $17,500 to assist them to manage the impacts of COVID-19. For 2 days now, this Labor government has refused to announce any action to support Victorian small businesses, despite every other state in the country doing so. Premier, when will you follow the lead of your Labor colleague in WA and provide direct cash support to struggling Victorian businesses and their hard-working staff?
I remind the Leader of the Opposition, it's when will the Premier
Thank you very much,
Premier.
Speaker, and I thank the Leader of the Opposition for his question. The first point I'd make is that I don't see this as a Labor or Liberal issue. I see this as an issue of national unity, and I think the way in which this question is framed makes it very clear how this emergency, this crisis, is viewed by the questioner and those opposite. This is not a matter of Labor or Liberal. This is a matter of everyone being in this together, everyone taking a considered approach and making announcements that will make a difference at the appropriate time.
Before calling the Leader of the Opposition, I warn members on both sides, if they shout across the chamber, they'll be removed without further warning the Leader of the Opposition.
Goodness me. Speaker, the Premier talks about at an appropriate time. Chris Bonacci of Myrtleford operates Alpine Spirit bus lines. He's had a devastating bushfire season, and on top of that, the impact of COVID-19 has forced him to lay off his 18 staff and to ground his entire bus fleet. Without government assistance, urgent government assistance, his business will not survive and these staff will lose their jobs permanently. For how much longer will this Labor government ignore these desperate pleas for assistance?
Call the Premier.
Thank you very much, Speaker. I'll put it to the Leader of the Opposition that we'll continue to work with officials from Treasury. We'll continue to work with the national government. Yesterday we were urged to deliver a surplus by some in clear contravention of advice from the Secretary of the Commonwealth Treasury, clear contravention of advice from the Governor of the Reserve Bank, clear contravention of common sense.
Order. The Premier will resume his seat. Order. The Premier will resume his seat. On a point of order, the Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker, the Premier is now debating the question. The question was not what is everyone else doing to assist. We know that. The question is why isn't this Premier doing anything to assist?
Order. The point of order is not an opportunity to repeat the question. Order. The Premier is being relevant to the question that's been asked. The Premier.
Speaker, I'm simply indicating from whom I'll be taking advice, and in the spirit of bipartisanship, I'll be as light as I can be. I will not be taking advice from those who are 100% at odds with the Governor of the Reserve Bank, 100% at odds with the Secretary of the Commonwealth Treasury, and can I just say, for completeness' sake, 100% at odds with Scott Morrison and Josh Frydenberg. We will make announcements and you'll be briefed on them at that time.
Order. Order. On a minister's statement, I call the Minister for Mental Health.
Thank you, Speaker. And I rise to add to the Premier's comments about what this government is doing to make sure that our health system copes and deals with this unprecedented threat that COVID-19 has unleashed on the globe and particularly this state. Around the globe, communities are grappling with how to keep normality and delivery of services in the face of unprecedented issues of stress on the health system. We are asking people to change how they behave to make sure that we flatten the curve to keep our hospital system operating. This is the biggest health challenge that we will face in our lifetimes. Make no mistake, the next few weeks and months will be tough for everyone, but our efforts are now designed to give our health system the best possible chance to cope with the surge in capacity when this pandemic hits its peak. So in addition to what the Premier's outlined already on the $437 million hospital package announced this morning, all designed to boost capacity so we can meet that peak in forecasted demand, I just wanted to add a few more updates. There have been now 149 cases of COVID-19 reported in Victoria, an additional 28 confirmed since I was here 24 hours ago. It is essential that we do all we can to limit that pandemic's growth. That is why the $37 million component in today's announcements goes to containment activities to test, track and contain the virus. A further $24 million for epidemiological surveillance right across the state, and a proposal supported by my friend, the member for Brunswick, in conversations we had this morning. Arrangements to make sure that $24 million tracks people with these infections. And with Indulgence House, a further 15,000 people will be tested across Victoria as a result of that effort.
Order. Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you. Speaker, my question is again to the Premier. Premier, even the City of Melbourne has announced a $10 million package to support businesses, including fee suspensions, small business grants and rent relief to help businesses through this unprecedented time. Why is the federal government, every other state and territory government and even local government doing more to support small business and their workers during this crisis than is the Premier and this Labor government?
The Premier.
Thank you very much, Speaker. I'm not certain if the Leader of the Opposition understands it, but there's a legislative process for the federal package. That'll occur next week at Parliament. So I haven't heard the Leader of the Opposition. Leader of the Opposition calling for federal Parliament to sit this week. So these two days.
Order. The Premier resume his seat. Point of order, Leader of the Opposition.
Point of order, Speaker. First of all, the Premier is debating the question. Secondly, this government just used its numbers to actually make sure Parliament can't come back for the budget session. What a hypocrite. What an absolute hypocrite.
Order. It is not a point of order. Premier to continue.
I was referring, of course, to the federal Parliament, which will be sitting next week. The point that I'm making is that the Leader of the Opposition is at best inconsistent and perhaps ill-advised, I think, on some of these matters. But again, I'm not interested in partisan attacks on these matters. I'll follow. Oh, now it's a funny matter. Now it's a matter of order. Announcements will be made, and those opposite, if they see fit to be briefed, take a break from politicking and be briefed, I'll be happy to arrange it.
Order. On a supplementary, the Leader of the Opposition. Order. The Deputy Leader of the Liberal Party. Order. Member for Kew is warned. Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker, my supplementary question to the Premier. Last night on Footy Classified, it was reported that you had had a conversation with AFL bosses about providing a secured loan to the AFL and clubs to help them during the COVID-19 crisis. Will the Premier assure Victorians that any financial support offered to the AFL will also be offered on similar terms to small businesses who are fighting to save thousands of Victorian jobs?
Order. The Premier.
Thank you very much, Speaker. As I indicated this morning, I've had discussions. Football does okay, right? Those opposite are critical of the fact that we've had no. You interjected. Those opposite are critical of the fact that myself and others have had conversations with airlines, with the Australian Hotels Association, with the AFL.
Premier resume his seat. Order. The Premier resume his seat. Order. On a point of order, the Leader of the Opposition.
Point of order. Speaker, the Premier is debating the question, and without repeating it, I would ask you to draw him back to answering it, which relates to, will small businesses get the same deal of the AFL? That's all.
Order. Leader of the Opposition is now repeating the question. I ask members not to order. I ask members not to interject, particularly across the table, and I ask the Premier not to respond to those interjections. The Premier to come back to answering the question.
As I was saying, Speaker, myself, the Treasurer, ministers across government are having conversations with many businesses, large and small, many stakeholders, many sectors, many different people across the board, all of whom are feeling the effects of this crisis. Some of those effects are common. Some of them are unique to certain sectors. We're engaging with those sectors to develop a comprehensive response that actually has an impact, and that is consistent with the national plan. And the Leader of the Opposition can be briefed on it at the appropriate time.
On a point of order.
Speaker, I'd ask you to draw the Premier back to answering the question, which was simply about parity of terms between offers to the AFL and offers to small businesses. He has not addressed that. He has 6 seconds in which to do so.
Order. The Premier has been relevant to the question. Has concluded his answer on a point of order. The Manager of Opposition Business.
Speaker, at the start of the session on Tuesday, you referred to a ruling that was made by the member for Warrandyte that when you call a opposition member on a point of order, that the Premier or the Minister would step down, because we've seen in previous weeks where the Premier, for example, has continued to answer the question and then sits down and then concludes. So in that case, we don't get it. So I'd ask you to enforce your own ruling that you made at the start of this session on Tuesday.
I thank the Manager of Opposition Business for raising the point of order. I did make a number of observations in my ruling around members sitting down when there was a point of order taken, and indeed points of order being made in the appropriate form. There's been some slippage in that today. I ask members to come back to the proper operations of the House. The next question is, Minister's statement from the Minister for Police and Emergency Services.
Thank you, Speaker. And I rise today to update the House on how the emergency management arrangements are in place in relation to governance and coordination around COVID-19. As early as the 1st of February, the Emergency Management Commissioner, as required under the legislation, appointed the Health State Response Controller, and then on March the 1st, established the State Control Centre in its full operation. That is now the hub of planning, intelligence, public information and coordination across all the agencies that are involved in relation to COVID-19. This ensured that all the structures were well and truly in place prior to the state of emergency being declared. And as soon as that was declared and the directives were issued by the Chief Health Officer, Victoria Police also established their Police Operations Centre that is now operating 24 hours, 7 days a week and feeding into the State Control Centre as per the arrangements. The declaration and directives have then also enlivened significant powers for Victoria Police to be able to enforce those directives, to be able to arrest, detain, disrupt, disperse people who may be operating against the directives on mass gatherings, and also on those returning from overseas and 14 days quarantining. At this stage, it appears Victorians are doing the right things, but it is clear that Victoria Police have the powers they need to both proactively and reactively do spot checks. We're working with Border Force. We have 9,000 people that come in through our airport, international airport, still at the moment, so significant numbers. But unfortunately, also police resources are increasingly being called to supermarkets. I think just in the last couple of hours, there have been a significant number of unrest at supermarkets, and Victoria Police are making arrests, and they will do that. Again, we're asking Victorians to do the right thing here. We want our police out giving reassurances, not having to arrest people, but they've got the powers they need to do that.
Order. The member for Morwell.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Premier. Premier, the impacts of COVID-19 are really being felt across many regional communities right now, and one of the concerns we have locally is accessibility to GP services and health services. There's a recognised shortage of GPs in the Morwell electorate, and many local residents are fearful that they'll be unable to get a doctor's appointment if they need to be tested for COVID-19. And whilst I understand responsibility for GP shortages primarily sit with the federal government, I've written to the Victorian Health Minister multiple times following ongoing complaints from local residents and GP clinics. And at a recent Senate Estimates Health hearing, it was duly noted that Traralgon, Morwell and Churchill clinics don't have enough GPs even before COVID-19 hit. Premier, can you advise what actions are being taken in concert with the federal government to address GP shortages in my community? And will local residents be able to get immediate access to medical services should they develop symptoms of COVID-19?
Premier.
Thank you very much, and I thank the member for Morwell for his question. I can say to the member for Morwell that Minister Makakos, on behalf of the Victorian Government and all Victorians, is working very closely with Minister Hunt at a national level. As the member for Morwell rightly points out, GPs are predominantly a responsibility of the federal government. However, simply saying to people who are anxious or saying to people who might need care, well, that's not our responsibility, that's hardly the right answer. What we are doing is working very closely together, public health, PHNs, as well as, well, others may not be interested in this answer. The member for Morwell this is a serious issue, and it may well relate to GP shortages in lots of other areas. Some would seem are not interested in this. The member for Morwell has asked a serious question. We are working government to government very closely. Health services are working very closely as well to make sure that we have adequate supplies of everything that will be needed. Now, the system is going to change. Things are going to be very different, I think, in the next 6 months than they have been. These fever clinics or COVID-19 clinics that are being established by the Commonwealth Government in partnership with our government and health services are exactly to the point that the member for Morwell raises. I think it is fair to say that prior to this health emergency, there are really significant challenges in making sure there are enough GPs in every community to provide every person, particularly vulnerable people, with the primary care that they are fundamentally entitled to. That's for another day, that debate. As we come together with a sense of unity to meet people's needs, not to have demarcation disputes about who's responsible for what, I'm confident, and I think the member for Morwell on behalf of his community can be confident, that staff are working together closely, governments are working together closely, departments and health services are working together closely as well, and with some of the specific interventions through that historic national partnership between our government and the federal government, those fever clinics being one example, I think we're in a better position to be able to respond. On the exact arrangements in the member for Morwell's community and on the notion of potentially advocating for anybody in the Morwell community who might need more, I would propose the following. I'm happy for my office to have a conversation with the member for Morwell, as I think we've already done on the question he raised earlier in the week about small business. If there are specifics he would like me to convey to the national government on behalf of his community, I'm more than happy to do that. If there's any further information I can provide about specific partnership and resources that are standing up, activities, additional things that are happening in the Latrobe Valley, I'm more than happy to provide that information as soon as I can get it.
Supplementary question, the member for Morwell.
Premier, as you're aware, many supermarket shelves are empty of essential items due to the selfish bulk buying of some people. This behaviour has placed many vulnerable members of my community, including the elderly, persons with a disability, those with health and mental health challenges amongst others, in an awful predicament whereby they're unable to access or purchase essential items. People who are required to work and unable to get to their supermarket early are also confronted with empty shelves when they eventually arrive at their supermarket. Many people in those categories have contacted my office in tears about this situation, and quite rightly are asking for stronger interventions by government and by the supermarkets, because what is in place right now is not working. So, Premier, can you advise what interventions the government might put in place to ensure members of my community and other communities are able to access adequate supply of essential goods and items?
Premier.
Thank you, Speaker. And I again thank the member for Morwell, and a minute may not be enough to get through all the different things that are being done. And if I need to add to this answer, I'm more than happy to do that in writing later on today. This is an issue. People need to stop hoarding. People need to stop buying 4 weeks, 4 months worth of groceries and going from top to bottom on their normal shopping list. A few more of the basics is what's important. And if those who are hoarding keep doing it, then the people that the member for Morwell is rightly concerned about and is standing up for today will not have the basics. To that end, we are, and we'll have more to say about very, very soon, about care packages. They're being prepared, they're being delivered, in fact, right now, to those who we had thought would be without groceries because of their quarantine. Now we face a slightly different challenge, people who can't get groceries because of selfish hoarding and totally inconsiderate and irresponsible behaviour that some people are exhibiting. We are taking action on that. There are issues for consumer law as well, and of course there's a partnership between Woolworths, Coles, Aldi and IGA, who are doing a great job at this very difficult time.
On a minister's statement, I call the Minister for Planning. Minister for Housing in this capacity.
Thanks very much, Speaker. I rise to update the House on the actions the government is taking to protect Victorians at risk of experiencing homelessness from the COVID-19 virus and to minimise the spread of the virus within public and community housing. It's crucial, Speaker, that we provide the right advice and assistance to those in need, particularly the most vulnerable in our community. And I was pleased yesterday to announce that my department released almost $6 million to reduce the incidence of rough sleeping and homelessness. This money will provide homeless agencies with extra funds to find immediate temporary housing for those in most need. And it will also go towards private rental brokerage for those at risk of falling into homelessness, helping to keep them in safe and affordable accommodation and reduce the transmission of COVID-19. We've also identified sites where alternative emergency housing can be provided for people to self-isolate or indeed quarantine. And we will work to continue to make sure we have enough beds for those who need a safe place to recover. We're putting extra staff on the ground also, Speaker, in our 13 older persons estates. These are estates that are predominantly high-rise bedsits for people who are particularly, for older people who are particularly susceptible to the COVID-19 virus. Our security, essential maintenance and cleaning service providers are increasing preventative measures on all estates, such as performing additional cleaning of communal areas, antibacterial sanitisers, and advising staff on how to work with our tenants to ensure that we continue our service delivery. The department's Keeping in Touch policy has been enacted, where older tenants will be regularly contacted by the Housing Call Centre to check on their wellbeing. We will always continue to support our most vulnerable tenants.
Member for Warrandyte.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Premier. Industry has been calling for a lifting of the moratorium on onshore natural gas to reduce prices and protect Victorian jobs. Given that Victoria is facing a job crisis, why has the Premier delayed lifting the moratorium on onshore conventional gas by another 12 months?
Premier.
Thank you very much, Speaker. I thank the member for Warrandyte for his question. The advice of the experts is, and I think common sense would tell you as well, that the prospects of a project between now and the middle of next year actually producing gas are very, very limited. So that's the first point. That's the first. Well, again, I'm asked to make that terribly difficult choice between the views of those opposite and experts. And on this matter and all matters, it is not such a difficult choice at all, Speaker. The experts have been very clear that there are some deficiencies in our regulations. There are some deficiencies in our processes, and we need to. Well, no, what we've had is a science-led process, not a Peter Reith-led process. They're two very different things. That again, that's something that seems to have that's lost on them as well. But apparently his lordship, that Peter Reith, the all-knowing, is a scientist. No, he's not. No, he's not. Peter Reith, Amanda Caples, easy choice. Easy choice. Fracking, no. Conventional gas, yes. Easy choice. Confusion and inconsistency versus evidence and policy that grows jobs and supports a balance in our energy sector. Again, easy choice. I won't go on to go any further about choices that are obvious and easy. That would not be right. But I would just say to the member for Warrandyte, do not wait for anyone on this side of the House and the considerable numbers that sit on that side of the House to ever take advice from you.
Member for Warrandyte on supplementary.
Very excited. On a supplementary question. Lifting the moratorium immediately is a very simple measure that your government could implement that would protect Victorian jobs and cost nothing. Why is the Premier so pig-headed, Speaker, that he would not admit that he has got this wrong and lift the moratorium on exploration and development immediately?
Order. I'm going to ask the member to rephrase that question without the use of an unparliamentary reference to another member. Order. Member can rephrase the question. Order. When the House comes to order. Member for Kew.
On a point of order, Mr. Speaker, the Premier spent the last 10 seconds of his answer abusing the member for Warrandyte, and I think you're showing a certain level of double standards with regards to asking the member for Warrandyte to rephrase his question. You haven't had a good morning, Mr. Speaker. I would ask you to reflect on your ruling.
Order. I thank the member for Kew for his counsel, and you can leave the chamber for 1 hour for reflecting on the chair. The member for Warrandyte on a point of order or two?
Oh, no, I'm not sure what word you're meaning.
Well,
there's
the
a
member
number
for
of words
Warrandyte's got a
here.
choice. You can re-ask the question, or you can, there won't be a question. Order.
Which one is it?
Order. The Leader of the House will come to order.
Because they're all factual words, I don't know which one.
Does the member for Warrandyte have a question?
Yeah, I do.
Order. The member for Warrandyte to ask a question.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
The member for Warrandyte on a question.
Yep. Lifting the moratorium immediately is a very simple measure that your government could implement that would protect Victorian jobs and would cost nothing. Why is the Premier so stubborn that he would not admit that he got this wrong and lift the moratorium on exploration and development immediately.
The Premier.
Speaker, whilst I'm grateful for the abundant protection you've afforded me, let me assure you, I've been called worse by better. I've been called worse by better. I don't think the member for what? Well, you just keep running those marginal seats, my friend.
Order through the chair.
Long may that continue.
Order.
Long may that continue.
There is a serious question that's been asked, and I do ask the Premier to come to answering the question.
Speaker, as I was saying, long may that continue. And I didn't think the Greens had a question today. Seems they do. The member for Warrandyte must not have been listening to my principal answer. I've covered this matter, the time that is necessary on the advice of the experts to get this right. And of course, the simple fact that it is highly unlikely, indeed, probably not possible, for there to be extraction in the next 12 months means that no time is being lost whatsoever.
Premier will resume his seat. Order. The Premier will resume his seat. Premier will resume his seat. On a point of order, the member for Warrandyte.
The question, the moratorium is on exploration as well as development, and as the Premier well knows. So the Premier can answer the question with regards to lifting the moratorium on exploration, which could begin immediately.
Order. The point of order is not an opportunity to debate the answer. The Premier to continue.
You can't rewrite the supplementary again. The leader, Order. The House will come to order. Experts or the member for Warrandyte.
Order.
Very easy choice.
Order. On a minister's, the Leader of the Nationals on a point of order.
On the point of order, Speaker, I'd ask you to reflect on your rulings during that question and the points of order that were taken, that you threw out the member for Kew for making a comment. The Deputy Leader, the Deputy Premier, has been constantly interjecting and making comments while you have been making rulings. I ask you to reflect on actually being fair on both sides of the House in the rulings that you make.
Order. I appreciate the way in which the Leader of the Nationals has raised that point of order. The member for Kew was removed for reflecting directly on the chair, not for a comment that he made across the table. And I do ask all members on both sides, particularly those at the table, to refrain from interjecting while members are on their feet. On a minister's statement, I call the Assistant Treasurer.
This is actually in relation to veterans, Speaker. The coronavirus has created an unprecedented situation for our community. In consultation with the state or territories, the federal government, and I'd like to thank the Federal Minister for Veterans, has made the difficult decision to cancel all Australian-led overseas Anzac Day services this year. This includes services in France, Turkey, Thailand, Malaysia and Papua New Guinea. In accordance with health advice, Victoria's Anzac Day Commemorative Council has also made the very difficult decision that midday services and marches will be cancelled statewide. Modified dawn services, including at Melbourne Shrine of Remembrance, will proceed, but they will not be open to the public. Anzac Day is a time to reflect on the service and sacrifice of all Australians who served in war and peacekeeping operations. It is a day central to our national identity. On Saturday, the 25th of April, I encourage all Victorians to join in a televised Melbourne Dawn service from home. I also invite all Victorians to join together for a minute's silence at 6 a.m. on Anzac Day. We can connect with one another during this time using the hashtag #Stand2. This term, which refers to turning out and standing ready, is particularly significant at dawn to dusk, and that will be familiar to veterans. This is a fitting way to continue to remember and recognise all of those who have served, continue to serve in our Defence Forces. The Victorian Government, I'm sure all people of goodwill in this place and outside of it, recognise that this is an extremely difficult time, both for veterans and other vulnerable members of our community. And thanks the community for its vigilance and support. And I also would like to place on record mine, and I'm sure again, all members of this House, gratitude to the RSL and other service organisations for the work that they're doing during these difficult times.
Move to constituency questions.